it's your boy Angry Birds comedian 1996, yes, superstar Luna no, and today, I'm going to tell you my opinion on GoAnimate's voices. I know some users do this, so I did my own version. So without further ado, let's get started. First up, Alan. Alan is one of my favorite vocaloid voices. I like this voice because it sounds so cool. Next up, Andrew. Andrew is okay, but this voice can be very annoying. So I never use this voice. But I respect your opinion on this voice. Next up, Andy. Andy is okay, but this voice sounds just like Andrew. Next up, Brian. Brian is the best British voice ever. I like it because it sounds so awesome. Next up, Charles. Charles is alright, but this voice is very grumpy. So I never use this voice. Next up, Dallas. Dallas is my favorite voice. I like this voice because he sounds like a cowboy. Next up, Damien. Damien is okay, but I never use this voice. Next up, Daniel. Daniel is my favorite voice ever. I like this voice because it sounds MLG. Next up, Demon. Demon is okay, but this voice is very scary. But I respect your opinion on this voice. Next up, Eric. Eric is my most favorite voice ever. I like this voice so much. It is also the voice that I'm using for my current avatar right now. But I may change it and my voice in the future. Next up, Evan. Evan is alright, but I use this voice extremely rarely. But I still like this voice. Next up, Geraint. Geraint is one of my favorite voices. I love this voice so much. Next up, Giles. Giles is okay, but this voice is not great. So I never use this voice at all. Next up, Hugh. Hugh is okay, but this voice is very deep. So I don't like this voice as much. Next up, James. James is my favorite voice. I like it because it sounds awesome. Next up, Joey. Joey is the funniest voice ever. I love it the way he says milk. Here's an example.
Can I have some milk?
Ha! I like when Joey says milk that way. That is very funny. Next up, Justin. Justin is okay, but this voice can be very annoying. So I never use this voice. Next up, Lee. Lee is alright, but I don't use this voice at all. Next up, Nathan. Nathan is okay, but I haven't used this voice. But I respect your opinion on this voice. Next up, Oliver. I do not like this voice at all. Next up, Paul. Paul is one of my favorite voices. I like this voice because it sounds like a teenager. Next up, Rich. Rich is okay, but this voice is too deep. So I won't use this voice. Next up, Robot. I do not like this voice at all. Next up, Russell. Russell is okay, but this can be annoying sometimes. Next up, Simon. Simon is my favorite voice. But according to the black rapper dude, this voice mispronounces almost every word. But I still like this voice the most. Next up, Skippy. Skippy is the worst voice ever. This voice sounds so awful. Next up, Steven. Steven is the best voice ever. I like this voice because it can understand and it is very brave. Next up, Stuart. Stuart is alright, but this voice is not very great. So I don't like using this voice. Next up, Tom. Tom is one of my favorite voices. I like this voice because it sounds so MLG just like Daniel. Next up, Allison. Allison is okay, and I still like this voice. Next up, Amy. Amy is the best British female voice ever. I like this voice because it is low-pitched than Emma. So Amy is one of my favorite voices. Next up, Ashley. Ashley is okay, and I still like this voice. Next up, Brenda. Brenda is okay, but this voice can be very annoying. so I never use this voice. Next up. Bridget. Bridget is okay. But this voice is very deep. And it is the voice that is only found on VoiceForge. So I never use this voice. Next up. Carolyn. Carolyn is alright. But this voice is not great. Next up. Catherine. Catherine is the second funniest voice ever. I laugh about it when she says, "No way." So I really like this voice. Next up. Elizabeth. Elizabeth is okay. But this voice is too deep. So I hate using this voice. Next up. Emma. Emma is the best female voice ever. I like this voice because it is high-pitched and Amy. So Emma is also one of my favorite voices. Next up. Fiona. I do not like this voice at all. The reason for it is because this voice can go a lot faster. It's Scottish. And it sounds like in a different country than in the United States. Next up. Grace. Grace is okay. But her crying voice is super annoying. Next up. Heather. Heather is okay. But I never use this voice. Next up. Hannah. Hannah is one of my hated voices. I hate this voice is because it sounds very stupid. But I respect your opinion on this voice. Next up. Isabella. Isabella is okay. But I dislike this voice a little bit. Next up. Ivy. Ivy is my most favorite female voice ever. I like it because it sounds very cute and adorable. So I use this voice. Next up. Jennifer. Jennifer is my #1 funniest voice ever. Even the crying voice is really funny. Next up. Jill. Jill is alright. But according to the black rapper dude, when you put the punctuation instead of the comma, she just passes the punctuation. So I never use this voice at all. Next up. Karen. I despise this voice so much. Next up. Kate. Kate is one of my favorite voices. I like this voice because it sounds like a grown-up. And it sounds like Miss Martin from Caillou. Next up. Kendra. Kendra is my second most favorite voice ever along with Eric. I like this voice because it sounds adorable. And it is high-pitched than Kimberly. Next up. Kimberly. Kimberly is my third most favorite voice ever. I like it because it sounds very cute. And it is high-pitched than Kendra. Next up. Lauren. Lauren is okay. But this voice is a little bit annoying. But I still like this voice. Next up. Megan. Megan is alright. But I don't want to use this voice because it is boring. So I will only use this voice on rare occasion. Next up. Nicole. Nicole is okay. But this can be weird sometimes. Next up. Olivia. I do not like this voice at all. Next up. Sally. Sally is one of my favorite voices. I like this voice because it sounds very beautiful and gorgeous. Next up. Samantha. Samantha is okay. But according to the black rapper dude, this voice is heard on an iPhone or an iPad. This voice is also heard when you call Best Buy. So I like this voice. Next up. Susan. Susan is one of my favorite voices. I like this voice because it sounds very cool just like other Vocalware voices. Next up. Tessa. Tessa is alright. But this voice is not that great. So I never use this voice. Next up. Vina. Vina is one of my favorite voices. I like it because a lot of users use this voice a lot on Elena. And it sounds just like her. Next up. Tween Girl. Tween Girl is okay. And I still like this voice. And last. Jordan. Jordan is alright. But this voice sounds very weird. So I never use this voice at all, and that's my opinion on GoAnimate's voices. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to, quote-unquote, like, comment, and subscribe. But anyways, this is me Angry Birds comedian 1996 yes superstar Luna No signing off.